compensation has not gone away. The DOJ and this lawsuit have not banned compensation, right? It's just not on the MLS. So there's still this latency now, and who knows how long it's going to last.
Fine.
That could be another question, okay? That could be another thing there. But it has not gone away. So the incentive, I'm going to answer your question for Christ's sake, all right? All right? This is Industry Relations, a podcast at the intersection of real estate and technology from an insider's perspective. Sponsored by Cotality. Stay tuned to learn more.
Hey everyone, and welcome to an episode of Industry Relations with Rob and Greg. This is your host, the notorious Rob, and as always, my amazing co-host, the fabulous Greg Robertson, everybody.
Hola, Rob.
Hola. See, we're going to try and reduce the ridiculousness. Anyway, listen, it was really great to see you.
You too, man.
Yesterday, I was in Orange County, which is, every time I visit, I'm like, my God, this is heaven on earth. Please, please, please secede from California so I could move there, please. It ain't even the taxes of the cost. I paid $5 a gallon for fuel, and I was like, I get it, man. I would pay this to live here. It's just the rest of the laws and the regulations and the craziness. I'm like, God. So
it's a tough love, man. It's a tough love sometimes.
It's not a tough love. It's real simple. Just join Arizona or Nevada. Just secede.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Or form your own Republic of South California or something. In any event. And we have some good news, I think, from your side. I believe your son just graduated high school. Congratulations.
That was yesterday. I went to all my kids I'm just completely proud of. But Toby this year, he's Charger of the Year. He won the top character award where they put his name on a plaque on the pillar of character in the middle of the school, and
that's amazing.
And he at graduation ceremony for graduation they pull kids to submit a speech that they want to make at graduation, and then the staff will sometimes they pick a speech, sometimes they don't, but his speech got chosen. He didn't share it with Jen and I. And he was able to speak and be on stage for the entire graduation ceremony yesterday.
Nice.
And he did a great job. I'll put a link to it in the show notes.
That's awesome.
And the thing is, he wouldn't share with us. He didn't even ask me to kind of help him out with it. So it was a complete surprise what the kind of speech that he gave to the class. But it was really, truly inspiring. And, like I said, my kids just, I'm very lucky.
Yeah, no, and here's the thing, man. I did obviously get to meet them, and we know Cole, who's our producer. Just only got to briefly meet Toby and Hope, and I gotta tell you, man, kids are like credit to their parents. Like it's you and Jen doing a great job.
I got to meet Eli, and
and you can tell how I fucked up as a father, as a result.
Oh no, man, I don't know how much I want to share, but that boy's going some places. He's already there, actually. He's probably where I was, like when I was in my late 20s, for crying out loud, as far as what he's doing.
It is kind of I don't know. In fact, that we should spend a few minutes talking about this because this is graduation time. Other parents, right? And I appreciate you putting that picture up. Fathers and sons.
Yes.
The four of us got to have lunch, which was great. And I don't know, man. Like,
I don't know. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Okay, is what I'm saying.
Go ahead. So I'll say this. So my son Eli, the younger one, he's a content creator. And he goes by the name of Angry Asian.
Shocking.
And I know he had his TikTok account hacked, but before the hacking, he was like 1.5 million followers on TikTok.
Oh my God,
he's had to get it back, and I think it's up to 750,000 on TikTok. He's up to about 250,000 on YouTube. So, like he's obviously having some success with it, which is crazy.
Yeah, I don't think we want to share the revenue he's making off his YouTube channel, but.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So basically, there's nothing I can tell him.
Yeah, I know. He's a junior in high school.
I can't give him no advice. I can't, hey, you should do this or you should But having said that, I do, right? Yeah. And in that context, so Obviously your son Cole is at NYU pursuing film because that's his passion, which is great. And he's doing a great job as a producer. If you are in need of a podcast or YouTube producer, you might drop us a line.
Sunbound Studios, yeah.
Yeah. We're willing to pimp him out, maybe for a finder's fee. But what's Toby's plans? What's he gonna do?
Yeah, I mean, Toby is the way I look at Toby, it's like I just need to get him a degree and go out there and be a salesperson. He's got great leadership abilities. He's a great public speaker. He has all these passions, but right now he doesn't have. He doesn't have like that clear direction like Cole had, and I think this is the same for a lot of parents. So he's going to attend like Cole did our local community college, which is a great college here, OCC, and then I think figure from there. He's going to apply at the Apple store. Yeah. Again, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. That's another kind of thing, but. I used to, right out of a high school, I went to go work for Radio Shack. Yeah. So to me, in a way, the Apple store is like a kind of a Radio Shack.
It is a Radio Shack for the modern day. Yeah.
But I could see him doing fantastic in some sort of, and I think it's always good. My retail background, and I think we've talked about this before, is a great experience of just getting to meet the people out there that are beyond yours. But No, he's got, whatever he's going to point his direction is, he's going to do, I think he's going to do very well. I mean, obviously he's going to always do very well. But what I try to do, and I think, and this has happened naturally for Eli, I want my kids to know that by my experience and example, I mean, it doesn't have to be working for anybody, right? So I hope that they get some sort of entrepreneurial spirit in them to be able to not have any fear of trying things out themselves and trying to make it happen for themselves without, because, basically like you and I are unemployable at this point, right? So
yeah, pretty much. But so having said that, I would like to share with Toby.
Okay, here we go.
The same advice that I gave to my sons, which neither of them have taken.
And this is going to go completely against what I'm going to tell them.
No, I think we've kind of talked about it. I don't know if we ever talked about it on the show, but I'm willing to bet that there's going to be a lot of parents out there who are listening who might feel the same way. So here it is. It's very simple. If you are a young man and you're not sure what to do, okay? Like if you're like Cole, you're like, I'm going to be filmed. Like, okay, fine. Go to college. If not, get a trade. Get a skilled trade. Yeah. Right? Because, and there's so many angles to this, but I know a bunch of tradespeople here in Vegas. An electrician, I know a plumber, and I know a solar installation guy who's kind of involved both electrical and HVAC. And dude, they are making money.
Yeah.
And one of the things they talk about, so I remember talking.
It's like what they call those boring businesses are the ones that are like just, that are just print cash, right?
And I think the world has changed. I think the economy has changed. So like my older son, Robbie, he's doing computer science at Texas A&M. He and all of his friends are like, we may not have a job because of AI. Right. Right. Or even if we, and you talk to programmers, obviously, and they all think like, yeah, no, AI is a tool. It's not going to be a threat to our jobs, blah, 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 right? You still need some human being to, tell. And even then they'll go, but it's going to be hard to get the entry-level job. Right. Right? Like, okay, once you're established, if you have 20 years experience in coding, sure, AI it's not going to threaten you. But if you're just coming out of college and you need that entry-level job and you don't know shit and you need someone to train you, AI is a huge threat. Things like that, right?
But if you're a plumber...
Bingo.
Right? Yeah.
Bingo.
Yeah, right? I could see both. I mean, both my sons starting and leading and growing. Right. I'm not sure. I mean, Toby's very handy, right? He's like myself. I always tell my kids, I can fix anything. Just point me, and I'll get it done. He's like that. But I also think he would be tremendous of like, okay, leading a crew of men. Absolutely. And being the front man and doing all the marketing to kind of grow that business as well.
But think about it. Like, that's how you make the money in this trades, right? You start out, right? You apprentice, you journeyman, whatever. And then you go and start your own company. Yeah. You start your own electrician business, you start your own plumbing company. And then you're living next to the fucking .com millionaires.
No, we got Sam, who's Crandall Plumbing, he lives in our neighborhood. Sam's, I mean,
Yeah.
he's great, and I'm sure he's just loaded too. But
Yeah.
he's run a very successful plumbing plumbing company
Yeah,
for sure.
And I'll say this, like, so again, I talk to my friends who are in the trades, and we talk about hiring. You know what they tell me is their number one problem for hiring people? No, but what do you think the number one issue is for them?
Finding people.
I know, but that's generally like, so you find people. So here's what they tell me. It's like, look, the number one issue I have is, right, do they have a criminal record? And do they do drugs? So literally it was like, if they don't do drugs and don't have a criminal record, I will hire them.
Right.
I'm like, yo,
yeah,
young
I mean,
men.
It is like, it's there has that, I guess feeling of like, if you're working in that capacity in the trades, it's like less than if you're, computer programmer or something, right? Which is absolutely does not make any damn sense. But
it makes no sense.
But
right?
the generation nowadays, it's like and your son has actually made this happen. But what it used to be, they wanted to be a doctor, a lawyer, an astronaut, right? I mean, those are kind of things. Now they want to be YouTubers.
Right.
Right.
And it's stupid.
Yeah.
So that's my thing. I keep telling Eli, like, hey, that's great. Do the YouTube thing, do content, but maybe, go learn how to be a auto mechanic.
Right.
Because then,
and then he shows you the amount of money he's making every month from YouTube, and
that's the problem. So I can't tell him shit. But he, like, I've talked to him, and he's like, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Like, if you need a backup, right? And to me, the skilled trades make the perfect backup.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have a criminal record and you don't have a drug problem, and you're able to just show up on time, you don't even have to be that great. Just show up on time, right? Be like polite and just be like a reasonable worker. And you have, you know how to fix cars, right?
Yeah.
You know how to do electrical, whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
I would probably lean towards, just because I like cars, more of a. If I had to pick a trade, it would be.
Right.
Well, I like woodworking a lot, but I would probably either be a mechanic or something involved in woodworking for sure.
Sure. Yeah. And then you think about. So that's just generally. I'd love to hear what people think. I know. Gen X, we grew up thinking like you have to go to college. Like if you don't go to college, you're a loser. I think things have really changed, and I don't know what it is for young women. For women, it might be different, but for young men, I'm so 100% convinced. Like even if you do go to college, go get your certification in HVAC or something.
Right. Right.
Because you never know. Right. Having said that, one of the interesting things that is relating to housing. Dude, have you been hearing all these complaints about new construction these days?
Complaints about new construction. I mean, the normal stuff you hear about is just regulation, right? And then the second thing that I've heard about is just how it just doesn't make financial sense to make low income housing, right? But I mean, not anything. Not here in California.
I have been seeing more and more videos, really. I haven't heard it from the field. I'd love to hear from agents about this. That the quality of new construction has really fallen off the cliff. Even in high-end luxury, and there are a couple of things you could see, like TikTok and whatever. The one that I remember is there's a home inspector who's doing an inspection of a $4 million house. $4 million new build. And it's cracks in the foundation, the shoddy, woodworking, like in the attic, like they just hide it all, right? But it's like really problematic, And maybe there are lots of reasons for it. Maybe it's because of, cost. Maybe it's because of regulation. Maybe it's because of those things. But that kind of makes me think, like, imagine if there's a new generation, right, of tradespeople, of general contractors, of new construction people are like, you know what? I want to do it the right way. Mm-hmm. I'm actually going to produce really high quality, right? Not necessarily like whatever's fashionable and faddish, right? But like really quality construction. Because I think people would pay for that. And I think that builder, it could be niche, it could be more expensive, but you just go out and say, look, I'm more expensive because we're going to do super quality construction.
I know there's a lot of builders like that in Orange County here. I mean, there's demand for that, right? I mean, so you see those things, you see those guys out there, and they do charge a a pretty penny.
Right.
But I can imagine it's just like what you were saying earlier. It's just finding people that are interested in that type of
Right.
lifestyle, that kind of job or whatever, right? Of that
dude,
physical labor of
Sure.
building and stuff.
Sure.
And then having, to me, it's all about design too, right? I mean, really, design is not just how you, what it looks like when you built it, but how you built it and how it was structured and everything else. I mean, it's all those steps is kind of
all
fascinating to me. Yeah.
All those steps. So we're going to, I mean, that was just something I thought because
trades. I like it. Yeah. I like
trades. It could be construction.
So what would you, if you had to like start up and you're going to like, okay, I'm going to take Rob Holland's advice and get into trades. What trade would you lean more towards?
So the number one I've always said is plumbing. Because I don't know about you, but the last 3 times I called a plumber, price was no object.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like,
can I pay more to get you here quicker?
Exactly, exactly. Because that's one of the few. Now, it depends on where you live. If you live in Vegas, if you live in Texas, right? HVAC is very similar.
Yeah, HVAC, yeah.
Right? Whereas like other trades, like they're incredibly valuable. I'm not saying, but say it's like carpentry.
Yeah.
I've never had like an emergency carpentry need.
Right.
I've absolutely had emergency plumbing and emergency HVAC.
Yeah, no, I like your line of thinking there. That's true.
Right. So if I were doing it, I think I would look into things where somebody's going to call you and basically be like, I don't care what it costs. Right? If you can get here now, I'll pay you whatever you're asking. Yeah. I think that's those are the trades I would look into.
I always like, you can tell when people have taken a little bit of step up of care in their business, right? I mean,
yes.
I know the place that I go, get service for my Audi is, they've spent time on the exterior. When I walk in their lobby, it's like, it feels modern and it's, I know it's independently owned, right?
Yeah.
But they've done a great job. Or is that local watering hole where they've spent too much money on this beautiful neon sign that gives them that starts that character or whatever. I mean, there is some kind of coolness about that. Yeah. That type of thing, right? For sure.
Yeah. So if we'd love to hear from you, if you have thoughts on that, but I think there's so much opportunity.
I love the plumbing.
So that would be me. But look, I mean, if you're passionate, so I know the guy who does my car audio, right? Pretty sure he didn't graduate from high school.
Right.
And he's not like the most educated, well-informed guy I've met, right? But he's passionate about car audio.
Yeah. So
when it comes to that topic, the man is
he knows
savant.
Everything. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's something to that. So like whatever. If your kid's super interested in, woodworking, right?
Yeah.
Then do that, right? Because I think the economy is changing. I think the world is changing. And I think that's where the opportunity is.
Can I tell you a quick plumber story?
Yeah.
I don't know if I told you. It's like a merging of worlds, right?
Merging of worlds.
I told you one of my close neighbors is a guy named Sam. He owns a big plumbing outfit out here. Shout out to Crandall's Plumbing in Huntington Beach if you need a plumber. So
consider sponsoring this podcast, please.
Yeah. We get together at the kind of block parties and stuff, right?
Sure.
And he's a really fun dude, and he's always doing the biggest fireworks shows at Sam's house, right? So, and I mean, it's easy to know what he does because he's got vans that say Crandall Plumbing all over the place, and that's who he is. But I think he had just a tangential bit of information about what I do, right? So Greg does tech and software and stuff. So he had one of his kind of lieutenants talk to him about this idea for an app. And he texted me and he's like, hey, we've got an idea for an app. Can I ping you and pitch you this and see if this makes any sense? And if I want to get it built, you can tell me how to get it built. I'm like, yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah, whatever. So we met at, Dos Amigos down the street at, local little cantina, him and his buddy. And the idea they had was basically, I think it was either his buddy's father or somebody, some other people they know that have been plumbers forever, but it's a physical job that really can't do that, but they have this knowledge, right? And so they had this idea of like building an app where you could kind of like, it's a FaceTime thing where you describe the situation. I'm going to walk you through how to do this. Okay.
Right.
I'm sending over the list of things to do.
Right.
Go to Home Depot, bring back, then call me back up, and then walk you through, and you can show the
Right.
camera doing all this stuff, and like you could leverage the knowledge that these people that have but can't really do the work,
Right.
but also that immediacy, like, well, I need to get something done now. Here's what I would tell you to do if you need to get something done now. You need a wrench, you need this, and that, and then I'll walk you through it, how to do it right here on the phone, right?
Right.
I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that's great. So it has to do video, it has to have some sort of, e-commerce component, blah, blah, blah. And we're talking, and I'm like, well, so how many calls do you get a day?
Right.
Like with this kind of immediacy, I need help now.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, I'd say probably 10 a week, that are
Right.
like that kind of thing. Like otherwise he says, I have to schedule you for the next day or whatever. But
Right.
he thinks there's a market for this immediate kind of thing.
Right.
Like, oh, wow. And then like he says, well, the first thing I would do is I make this a separate company, because if you're getting those kind of calls, other plumbers are going to have the same thing. So 10
right.
a week times fucking 90 plumbers in the area.
That's right.
That's a big thing. And then I thought, well, why do you need an app at all? Right? I mean, everybody's got FaceTime,
Right.
right? Can you take credit cards over the phone? Oh yeah, for sure I can do it. I can do that. Okay,
Yeah.
so you have a list of plumbers that can be that person that kind of to answer those questions. Oh yeah, my dad, my uncle, my friend's uncle, he's just sits at home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, well, what's the problem? Somebody calls in, says I need
this
help.
problem. Yeah.
Okay, I have we have Insta Plumber for $150,
Right.
or I can schedule you for 2 days from now.
Right.
And the way Insta Plumber works is I take your credit card, I swipe you $150, and this will give you 2 hours of service from them, and they'll call you back and walk you through with your phone. Fucking Insta Plumber, man. Give me the credit card. Boom.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll have a plumber call you. Click. No app involved.
Yeah.
No anything. And he's, it was when you have those meetings with people and like their eyes just go, holy shit, why am I overcomplicating this thing by needing an app? I says, so do that now.
Yeah.
And then, and then you're going to know in 10 weeks whether, maybe it would be better served in a focused app for this, or maybe it wouldn't.
Yeah.
Right. But find that out. I mean, just test. You got 10 callers coming in a week. Try it out with them.
Yeah.
Call your dad up and say, look, we're going to try this. You want to try this? Okay. And we'll see how it goes. That way you don't have to build anything and see what happens. I haven't checked back into them yet. What happened, but
I love the idea. It's a little bit like an Angie's List, but like a DIY Angie's List.
I mean,
I think it'd be perfect for this. Retired plumbers.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. You have a network of these people that have this knowledge, but they physically can't do the work.
Or they don't want to.
Right.
Right. So I'll charge you $50 for, a half hour of my time.
Yeah.
And then you just show me what you got going and I tell you what you should be doing.
Yeah.
I like it.
A
all right. If you start this company,
If
you start this company, we think you should sponsor this podcast.
Yeah, that's exactly right. This episode is brought to you by our sponsor, Cotality. CoreLogic is now Cotality. Same trusted technology and data, just with a new name that reflects their mission to unify property professionals, strengthen industry relationships, and drive innovation globally. Cotality powers tools you already know and love, like Matrix, the gold standard for MLS systems. There's One Home for agents who want to give their clients a more personalized collaboration experience. MLS Touch keeps you connected to the MLS no matter where you are. Realist gives you the insights to stand out as the local expert and tools to fill your funnel with high-value leads. The new One Homeowner platform keeps you top of mind and delivers value long after the deal is done. The new One Homeowner platform keeps you top of mind and delivers value long after the deal is done. Learn more at Cotality.com, and if your MLS is powered by Cotality, don't miss Camp Cotality for MLS Staff and Leadership this June. It's the perfect place to connect, learn, and see what's next. Our thanks to Cotality for sponsoring Industry Relations.
All right, so let's turn to. We've spent half the podcast talking about the trades and young men because they do have a crisis. We could maybe talk about that in future episodes. But I'll just start. What'd you think of the event? Obviously, so the event there was a panel discussion. It's myself, James Dwiggins, and Ed Zorn, at the Orange County Associated Realtors, which was a phenomenal event. They did a great job. And of course, with
Shout
those
out to
two
CC.
guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was good, but from the audience perspective, what you think?
Great. I mean, it was a little problem in the beginning because they put all the latte machines in the same building, so we heard the steam makers go off every now and then. But no, I mean, I don't know if people really appreciated. Ed was in town for a MLS board meeting because he normally lives in Knoxville, Tennessee, so this is Orange County. And then to get James Dwiggins, right, who flew from the East Coast,
poor guy.
and then you.
Yeah.
These are, I mean, that's an Inman panel, man, and they got to see you guys in a really close, intimate
Inman
setting.
can't afford us.
Yeah, and it was it was fantastic. I mean, I think both Ed and obviously James are talking their book for sure.
Sure.
Right, but I think there was some great discussion going on.
Yeah. Was there anything new? Was there anything new for you? Because one of the things we talked about after is like some of our topics are so inside baseball.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I'm glad that agents came and they, maybe got something out of it. A lot of our stuff is really like not for them at all. Right?
I'll tell you what I kind of crib noted and what I'm going to steal, honestly, for this to some other kind of things that I'm doing in the future here is I did enjoy the question of, okay, so, everybody complains. We all complain. We complain on this podcast, whatever.
Yeah.
Let's say you're in charge of NAR. What are the first two things you do?
Right.
I thought that was that to me was a little bit new. I hadn't heard that. You might have. I mean, you do more of these than I do sometimes, but I hadn't heard that question, and I thought the feedback of that was kind of fascinating to me.
Yeah.
What Ed said and what James said, I thought were great responses actually. So I'm gonna steal that for any panel I do coming forward.
I've had things like that, maybe not on a panel, but online it happens all the time. And I guess I've always felt like, I wonder how useful it is.
What, that question?
Because the answer...
I mean, Ed gave a very specific answers to that.
Ed gave a very
right?
specific, right.
And then, then basically James came up with a whole other kind of way of looking at that association, right? So I thought, I mean, I think like anything, you can ask any question, but... it depends on who you're talking to. And we had some great, you three were some great minds up there. And I think they gave some really cogent and really kind of thoughtful answers.
So how would you answer that question, Greg? If you're made dictator of NAR.
You can't do this to me.
I just did. I mean, I had to give it, like, if you were dictator of NAR, what are the first two things you would do?
I'm not as a policy wonk as you are and Ed is. Like, I think his thing was basically the first thing he would do is rewrite section 13 or 16.
16, I think, yeah.
Yeah, and basically make it a part of the code of ethics that a seller cannot take commission from. Seller's agent can't take commission from the buyer's agent or can't pay it.
Yeah,
can't pay it, right?
Yeah.
And that I'm like, okay, wow, that's really that would get you out a lot of things there, right? Mm-hmm. Hey, it's against our code of ethics to do that. I mean, if they want to, consumers, I mean, that was very smart. I think a very kind of thing there. But there were some other things he mentioned there. But I really like, I think what kind of James said, and like a total reframing to kind of crib a term you've been using lately. And he mentioned, I could see that he making scoochy faces when he mentioned this.
The National Association of Homeowners.
Right, National Association of Homeowners. And he kind of likened it to NAR, or
NRA.
NRA, which you kind of like, oh my God.
That's when I made faces.
Yeah, that's when you made faces.
Is worthless piece of
shit.
shit.
But basically, it's like, instead of like, it's like a professional organization of realtors, 1.5, we'll make it the 100 million homeowners.
That's right.
And if you can kind of capture that, like the NRA has done for gun owners, when there's something in the Congress about that's going to threaten or, policy that's going to hurt homeowners, you activate all them, and then they go there. Now you have a really huge organization that's more consumer focused.
Sure.
And it's just a reframe of NAR, right? To homeowners, not realtors in a sense.
Sure.
So there's something there, I think, for sure.
There is, but I was directly involved with that, years ago, right? I don't know if you remember, but I had a think back. This is probably 10 years ago now, that I try to get going within NAR, within Realtor World, called Neighborhood Advocates.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole idea was kind of around that. Like, how do you activate the homeowners, right? How do you activate the people who are actually,
Yeah,
actually
NAR had a
affected?
program called House. I think the site's still up. House Logic
House Logic was
a
thing.
little bit around there, right?
They funded, what's it called, American Association of Homeowners or something like that. It's a AstroTurf organization, and New York Times wrote about it, right? And it turned out to be just like a way of funneling money to Republican candidates. The issue that always ends up happening there is homeowners, quite frankly, a little bit like consumers, right? So think like our friend, Steve Brobeck or some of those guys who are like, we are consumer advocates.
Yeah.
And it's like, what consumer came to you and said, we really need this? And the answer is no one, right? So when you're talking about a large group of people, consumers, homeowners, voters, right? The interests are just too disparate, right? So another way to put it is, why don't we have an American Association of Homeowners already? You're a homeowner, right? Like, I'm a homeowner. Would you pay money and join some organization to represent homeowner interests?
Yeah, I mean, it's not as, I think with gun owners, just to go back to
Correct.
James's thing, I mean, that's a very kind of activated group. Guns, right?
But,
I mean, where I think as a homeowner, I would assume my congressman is really is trying to take my best interest at heart in that capacity. I don't think it's not as a trigger, pardon the pun, as like I think gun owners feel about their right to have guns. Right.
I mean, but that's only part of it. Part of it, it's that.
I think it's a big part.
No, what I mean is like the gun owners are activated because the government's constantly going after them, right? And it's a Second Amendment, like it's a constitutional right, and the government still keeps fucking with us, right? So maybe the day will come if the governments keep fucking with homeowners' rights, right? Say, hey, you need a license in order to buy a home,
right?
And we're going to triple your property taxes every year, or we're going to, whatever, right? Your house is too big. Like, we're going to tell you what size your house must be.
Well, I mean, you could look at it another way of like saying that NAR is doing a great job because those things have not happened, right? So there's no reason to have a National Homeowners Association.
One of the reasons why I loved NAR so much and why I still want to somehow resurrect the spirit of it is because NAR was like the main lobby organization defending private property rights. For years, like back when Kelo versus New London came down, right? The takings case, right? I mean, NAR, I think, was like the only organization like, no, this is no good. This is not, like, you are absolutely violating private property rights. And whenever they've done that, I'm like, that's awesome. And I think NAR was able to do it because it activated a small minority of people who make money from real estate, right? And aligned their interests with the interests of homeowners, right? So there are times when that works and it's phenomenal, right? But because it is an interest group, right? And I kind of lay the fault at Bob Goldberg's feet when he talked about we're not just the National Association of Realtors, we're the National Association for Realtors, and it wasn't like NAR didn't do this before, but when they then sort of really started stressing, we need to lobby for things that just benefit our members, right? Whether that is private property protection, whether that is for homeowners or not, like those are the times where I start getting a little bit like, go back to your roots, right? Go back to your roots, under all's the land, right? Upon its, proper allocation, right? If we could do that, I think that's what made NAR so powerful. And I would love to see it go back to that. I don't know that it's going to take the form of what James wants to see happen, is like this organization of homeowners. Because the first thing that comes to mind right off the bat, okay, fine, you have this organization of homeowners, right? Who should be on the board?
Right.
So now the realtors lose power, right? And what do you do if the National Association of Homeowners comes out and says, these realtors, man, they make too much money. We're going to lobby the government to cap their commission at 0.5%. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Well, okay. So circling back to just the panel,
yeah,
the MLS forum itself. I mean, what were your takeaways as far as those things? And like, I have another takeaway, but I'll go to you first.
I think my biggest takeaway was this stuff really, the policy stuff, the things that we talk about, right, really doesn't apply to agents.
Right. It might have been a bit of like too inside baseball for the crowd that we were at, right?
Yeah. Not only that, but like one of the questions, like if you're an agent, how would you prepare given all these changes and chaos? I'm like, that's ask your broker, kind of thing. Or there are specific rules, so it might have been useful for like Ed to talk about here are CRMLS's rules, and these are members of CRMLS, and therefore this is what you have to do to prepare. But at a higher level, like what happens to the MLS or doesn't happen, or these big industry threats or whatever, NAR, Zillow, litigation, settlement, like at the agent level, I'm like, I don't know if it matters at all.
Yeah. I mean, what I enjoyed, it was a great event. But
it was a great event.
The thing that I always, and I miss about going to these, I used to go a lot of these back in the day, but so after it, we went out, they had a little food truck, and you got a little sandwich from TK Burgers afterwards for free. It was part of your ticket.
That's right.
And we got to sit down in the kind of common area there, right? They had at the place. And a couple realtors just sat down, and we just kind of shot the shit, right? And these would be, it's hard to, and we talk about this stuff a lot, but that was a very grounding thing.
Yeah.
To have these two practitioners, right?
Yeah.
And come up, and I think they recognized you from the podcast, and then they looked over and they realized I was here too, right?
Yeah,
that was kind of funny. Yeah. So maybe a little bit more educated because she was also she'd been involved pretty high level at the association,
MLS chair, etc.
But listening that you say that, but she was pretty cogent on some
of
the issues.
She's a former MLS chair.
Yeah.
Right. So for MLS leadership, right? For leadership,
yeah,
these are things that they have to wrestle with. But I don't know. And like I think associations, MLS are constantly like, what kind of interesting events can we bring to our members, right? What sort of educational programs can we have for our members? And I totally get it.
Yeah. Well, there's no parking left. If that's any sign.
Yeah. But it's like that was one of my big takeaways. Like as far as like the MLS itself is concerned, for the agent, there really isn't a whole lot for them, right? Other than here are the rules, comply.
Yeah. There was a lot of head nodding when, with Ed speaking and James talking about the different things they've had to kind of suffer with or deal with since the lawsuit. Yeah. So,
yeah.
I remember a time when you and I would give talks about, and nobody even understood what was going to happen. And,
right.
That they got the message, and they're everybody was understood now, right? So, I think a lot of our worries was like, oh, they're never going to get it, this or that, but seemed like everybody was getting it, and they found a way to work with it. And actually, I actually felt that a lot of the room felt that some of these changes were good, right?
Yeah, and people want to fight, and people want to have drama and stuff like. The other thing I think that was just a personal takeaway, and I'm trying to process it myself, is I guess I underestimated the degree to which I personally am quite a bit fatalistic about the MLS. I don't know why you're laughing.
Okay, go ahead.
Sonny laughed too, so I don't know why you guys are laughing.
All right, go ahead. Sorry.
The fatalistic meaning, not negative, right? Fatalistic meaning, like it's gonna happen, like it's fated to be, right? And I think it was the part when I was talking about just look at the incentives.
Yeah.
Right? So, because Ed's out there talking about we need to do this, we need to do that. James wants to push this policy or that policy, and I'm looking at all of that, and I remember thinking like, I like and respect both of those guys, right? And I totally get where some of the policy people are coming from. But I'm like, but it's almost like none of those policies matter in a sense, because the incentives as they're lined up, like things are going to happen, whether we like it or not, whether we want it or not, whether we push it or not, like. And maybe I'm wrong about that, but that was one of my sort of takeaways, was thinking like, wow, I'm really fatalistic. Like, it's almost like I feel like the bread's baked.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Right. The bread's baked. It's just a matter of waiting for the thing to come out. Right. So like one of the examples was we have 515 MLSs now.
Yeah.
Right. To me, I'm like, the bread is baked already. The cake is baked. We're gonna get down to somewhere between 1 and 50.
Yeah.
Right.
It's ridiculous, but yeah.
But see, like you say, it's ridiculous. But I'm like, but you look at the incentives, and I'm like, that's gonna happen whether we like it or not, whether we want it to happen or not. Like whether you're pushing it or not. Like I'm pushing it. Like I would like to see one national MLS, obviously. But even if you don't, it's gonna happen. Is how I felt.
Well, yeah. I mean, but that's you, man. I mean, that's
of course.
That's why we have this podcast, because you get so certain on things, and it drives sometimes our listeners crazy. It drives me crazy sometimes,
sure.
because how can you? I'm in my head. How can he think that? I mean, it's so anti, to whatever I'm thinking. But you're like, matter of fact, no, it's already done, and then it's that long draw from your vape pen, and it goes on, right? I mean,
so I could be wrong. But that was something that really hit me at the panel. But I'm okay.
Well,
but
why do you think? Was it because of the energy in the room of agents, being there and being engaged, and like, okay, well, maybe these people will find a way to make that this is going to be harder to consolidate because of these. I mean, what made you kind of like? Because it sounds like you had some sort of learning there of
I did.
Of like, maybe maybe I'm wrong, or maybe there's more to this than I thought.
No, it wasn't that. Okay. I'll tell you what the moment was. It was when Ed mentioned that there are 24,000 brokers in CRMLS. Mm-hmm. And he mentioned there are 60% of his members never put a single listing into the MLS.
Well, they could be buyer's agents, yeah.
Because that's why. No, so it wasn't necessarily that they're unproductive. It's basically 60% of his members, these are his stats, don't do any listings. They only help buyers. Right?
Well, no, I don't think that was the case. It could be comprised of you could be a buyer's agent and not ever put a listing into the.
That's what he meant. Yeah. Okay. So that's what he's saying. They are primarily buyer agents.
Okay.
So he's the one who brought that number. 24,000 brokerages, not agents, brokerages, and 60% of his members don't ever put a listing into the system because they're just helping buyers. They're buyer agents, right? I'm listening to those businesses. Okay, I get it, but remember what I said about incentives, right? And I asked him the question. Right, like how many brokerages does it take in CRMLS before you get to 51% of listings? And he didn't really know, and I said it's probably 2%. Right, that's just based on my, my study of every MLS right. I've ever looked at. 2%. He said maybe 1,000. Right, maybe it takes 1,000 brokerages to get to 51%. And my question, okay, so if I'm one of those 1,000 brokerages, what is my incentive for wanting the other 23,000 brokerages to survive? And he didn't really have an answer. He talked about cooperation. Right? Like, we're a broker cooperative. And I said, well, if you're cooperative, then the reason to join it is because I make more money by joining the cooperative, right? But if I'm the largest broker, I don't make any more money by joining a cooperative. I lose money.
But yes and no. I mean, it's a long tail, right? So, I mean, there is that bunch up the front, but there's the rest of those guys, which is a lot of brokers that are contributing to the pool by delivering inventory, right? But, so there, the incentive of keeping them going is that I have more inventory to sell.
But so that's the thing. So if you go to the top 1,000 brokers and you're at the majority of listings, right?
But you're not. I mean, that's 51%. Right. So there's 100 listings in the market.
Right.
You only have 50.
I have 51.
Right? You have 51. There's still 49 listings out there.
Right.
And we're just using that as some math here. I mean, your incentive to keep it going is like, well, I just can't rely on these. I mean, I want to see as much as that are out there. And for whatever reasons, these people don't want to join me.
But like these people don't want to join me. And then I'm like, James Dwiggins tells the story of his grandfather, how he built the largest brokerage, in San Luis Obispo, right? Because you're the biggest, man. The agents and buyers have to come to you.
Yeah, and when you're the long tail, I mean, it's a symbiotic in a sense. They still
It's
have
not
to go
symbiotic.
out.
No. So here's my point, and maybe this was what the panel was not necessarily designed. I'm saying it used to be symbiotic because the MLS would say yes,
Yeah.
we're going to guarantee payment.
Yeah.
Okay, you don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
All right, now what?
Well,
Now you're
okay.
going to keep talking cooperation.
Okay,
to
okay.
me.
Let's pull that thread a bit, right? So
Yeah.
let's say, because it's really two different things, right? And this has been mischaracterized a lot of places.
Can I ask you? All right, let me ask you a favor. Because this was my thing. As you're thinking through, make the argument. Tell me the incentives involved here.
Okay, I will.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the myth is compensation went away.
Yeah.
That's a myth, right? Because
It's not a myth.
it is a myth because compensation went away on the MLS,
Okay.
right? But there is still inherently there's still compensation being got by the buyer's agents and sellers, right? So it may not you may not be able to post it on the MLS. It may not be part of joining the MLS, but we all know, and it's still thriving. And I think James said in some places, it's commission rates are even higher than we were before.
Who's enforcing it?
It seems like it's become a natural thing where the competing sides of the transaction are enforcing it because they're hoping it's going to happen to them next time, right? So it's a natural kind of thing. Compensation has not gone away. The DOJ and this lawsuit have not banned compensation, right? It's just not on the MLS. So
Correct.
there's still this latency now, and who knows how long it's going to last.
Okay, fine.
That could be
fine.
another question, okay? That
Fine.
could be another thing there, but it has not gone away. So the incentive, I'm going to answer your question for Christ's sake, all right? All right? Okay, so compensation has not gone away, Rob. So it's not on the MLS, but there's still this inherent thing of like, hey, I'm going to help you sell your house and I'm going to get paid, and you're going to help me sell my house and you're going to get paid. It's not on a piece of paper. It's not on the MLS, but there's a construct that's there, that's still there, and there's still somehow there's some powerful incentives to keep that going, right? So that's my answer.
Okay. So you think that basically what you're saying is compensation is self-enforcing.
Right now it is.
So back in 1999, what was the incentive to join the MLS? Because you're leaving out enforcement, right? So I'll just lay out the argument.
No, there you are, but I mean sometimes
if enforcement has gone away,
for whatever reasons now is that, and this might change, and this might be a leftover, this might be baggage, this might be a ripple of things, right? It might change, but for right now, people seem to say, you know what, it is worth this thing that was being delegated, being regulated, being enforced by my MLS is still a good model, and we want to keep it coming. We want to still keep this going alive. Now that might change, but right now, that's the construct that they still have.
Let's just walk through a real simple scenario. Okay, it is 2019. Okay, you're the buyer agent. I'm the listing agent. Right? You bring me a buyer. The deal is done. And I say to you, I'm not paying you. Whatever, I'm not happy with your performance. You didn't do enough. Whatever, I'm just not going to pay you.
Right.
What happens?
Well, it depends on the agreement you have with them.
No, it's 2019. We're both members of CRMLS.
Right.
What happens?
MLS comes down with a hammer.
That's right. And I go, the MLS steps in. You would then call the MLS and say, hey, Rob is refusing to pay me. He's not honoring his compensation agreement, right? The MLS calls me and goes, hey, Rob, you better pay Greg. Procuring cause, blah, 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 right? And if you don't, we're going to kick you out of the MLS.
Yeah.
Okay, now it's 2025. Same scenario. You bring me a buyer, I say I'm not paying you. Okay, now what? What do you do?
Well, again, that conversation should be had with the buyer, not the seller agent, right? You have to have an agreement with the buyer so that the enforcement is going to become from.
But you just told me compensation exists.
It does exist, but you're going to have a buyer's agreement to say, hey, I'm going to provide these services for you, and for that you're going to pay me this. If they say to you, I'm not going to buy, I'm not paying you.
Right.
Are you talking about before a transaction or after a transaction?
I don't know, during the transaction, I guess. So, hey, the buyer's negotiating that, but towards
and
the end
they've already signed a buyer's agreement?
So, yeah, at the end of it,
well,
you've signed the buyer agreement. Hold on. You've signed the buyer agreement. There's a sales agreement, right? And in the sale agreement, my sellers agreed to compensate, whatever, pay you 2.5% concession, right?
Yeah.
I show up at the closing and say, I think you screwed this deal up, Greg. We're not paying.
Yeah, I mean, that's for the courts, I guess, right? I mean,
Exactly.
It's an agreement, yeah.
That's right. So you would have to take them to you'd have to take them to court,
Yeah.
right? Okay. What's your incentive for the MLS then?
Well, I mean,
Because I'm not going to lose MLS access, right? And you have to sue me. And let's say it's a $10,000 commission check.
right.
How much money are you willing to spend on legal fees to get your $10,000 commission?
Right.
Less than $10,000.
Right.
Meaning, sure, there's enforcement, but
I mean,
in reality, there is no enforcement.
Yeah, but there's going to be, again, if that happens too many times and it's the same agent involved,
Right.
I mean, that's going to be a reputational hit.
Of
and
course.
that person's going to go out of business, probably.
Of
right?
course, but that exists no matter what, whether the MLS is around or not.
Yeah, but I mean, again, compensation is still alive, right? There's a thing called the MLS that's also still alive, although it doesn't have that kind of component in there.
I agree.
And there's I think what they're saying right now, yes, there is a risk. Yes, the MLS is not the enforcer on this, but we still think that there's something good here. There's still value here, and we're going to be part of that. And again, it seems to be working so far, right?
It's working. Yeah, of course it is. But my point is, this is the lack of analysis of incentive. In 2019, prior to these changes, right, the incentive for any broker, any agent to make sure they belong to the MLS was so big, right? Because if one of my agents gets screwed over, I call the MLS. I don't have to go hire lawyers and pay $30,000. I just go to the MLS. The MLS enforces that agreement, right? Okay, they don't do that anymore.
A lot of other
this
things
is the
they
challenge.
do. A lot of other things they do, though.
Sure. So they don't do that anymore. So the biggest incentive I had to join the MLS is gone. Okay. You could say compensation exists. You could say social sanction. You could say reputation blacklist. That's all true. But all of those exist without the MLS as well, right? So I'm saying as a broker, my incentive to join the MLS is different now. Now it has to be something else. It has to be lockboxes, forms, community data, whatever,
Comps,
right?
yeah.
Comps, whatever, right? And Ed and James,
and we're going to find out as we go on, and there are already people that are chipping away at this.
Sure.
If those other things that makes an MLS are strong enough to keep this kind of order, this social order
I agree.
intact. Yeah,
I'm agreeing. So, but all I was pointing out was the incentives are now different.
sure.
Okay, and they are far less.
They're less.
So, right, incentive to join the MLS is far different. It's far less. That's just factual. The issue is you can't do this in a vacuum, right? Like that's my thing, right? Is on the one hand, so in 2019, back in 2019, right? If I'm Compass, I had an incentive back in 2019, right, to get rid of a whole bunch of the long tail brokerages. Why? Because that's a recruiting threat, right? Not just Compass, anywhere, whatever, EXP, the big brokerages. The small independent brokerages are always a recruiting threat. Always. Okay. But the incentive to join the MLS and play nice was higher than the incentive to get rid of the small brokerages. Right? I'm saying that's changed now. So now, Ed, MLS executives, agents, brokers, they all have to now actually answer the question, okay, what are the incentives now? Is my incentive to get rid of competition higher than the incentive to join the MLS and play nice, or is it lower? And I don't know the answer to that. What I'm saying, though, is I just look at the incentives and I go, there's this fundamental shift, there's this fundamental change that, again, I don't know if it matters at the agent level. I really don't, right? Except in the end, you end up with the scenario that James laid out, which is you're left with like 15 brokerages, right? And every single agent is going to have to go work for one of those 15 brokerages, right? He did say that, and it's the first time I've heard him like straight up say like my company Next Home cannot exist, if the private listing network strategy succeeds.
Yeah, and that's again not in a bubble. We got to wrap here, but I mean, then this can be driven by consumers, right? I mean, if consumers
Absolutely.
still want that hand holding, that trusted advisor
Absolutely.
type of thing, that's going to drive things. And
Yeah.
and if the consumers are starting to backlash on, I can't go see all the listings in one place, that's going to change things. So there's a lot of things going on here. Right?
No, totally. So, but this was in context of, so maybe we should actually, I'll flesh this out more. Maybe we'll talk about it more. I'm saying I realize I'm more fatalistic than I thought, because I just look at incentives and how they're lined up, right? And I don't think it's just real estate. I think it's just society as a whole, right? Like going back to what we started talking about, right? Like if I'm a young man, I'm 18 years old, I'm graduating high school. What's my incentive to go to college versus my incentive to go get a plumbing certification? Those incentives have changed over the last 10 years. They've changed over the last 20 years, right? When we were graduating high school, the incentive to go to college and become a lawyer, become a doctor, I think was way bigger than I'm going to go learn a trade and work with my hands. That's all changing, right? So I'm just looking at incentives.
For sure. And you're picking one, right? And
I'm picking one, correct.
And again, maybe organized real estate, it can be successful in reframing this whole conversation to the consumer level, saying, and they get the message out there, and it works that for consumers, hiding listing is not the answer, and consumers then back, the brokers that are doing private exclusives get a lot of backlash.
That's right.
And then that is an incentive for them to go back to the other model. I mean, you could pick any incentive out there. It's just going to be who's the most successful in, or what is going to happen, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
But that's my so we'll maybe end with this, because your point, I think what I would appreciate from everybody, right, as you're laying out whatever argument you're laying out, right, then lay out the incentives involved, right? So organized real estate comes out and says, we're going to do this, we're going to create this incentive. Cool. Then let's look at that incentive. And then we could see, does that incentive make sense?
Yeah.
Right? Versus, because again, there's always going to be this trade-off countervailing incentive, right? Okay, but if we do this, then we're going to lose over here. Or if we gain, you know what I mean? Like, it's that. And I think when I think about what I consider sort of narrative versus an attempt to get at the truth, is that lack of balancing, right? Make it seem like, no, there's no cost, and there's this, the status quo is just, perfect and wonderful. I'm like, is it? We're not taking into account the different incentive structures, right? So I don't know. I'm probably getting a little too in my head about this, which, surprises precisely no one. But that was my big takeaways. Like, more analysis, more thinking about what are the incentives in play here probably would help figure out where things are going to go.
Yeah.
So in any event, hey, thanks for listening to us yammer. Really appreciate you. If you have a young man graduating high school, we'd love to know if any of our takes are, rational, or if you're like, you two are crazy and stop corrupting the youth. We're open to that. And I will see you next time I see you.
Bye, everybody.
All right. Take care, everyone.